afternoon. Thank you for joining us this Sunday. I'm Valda, I'm the owner of Wallspace. I'm very excited for Zeal to be doing an artist conversation about this sensational solo show that we have here. Personally, I've been a huge fan of Zeal for many years, and I'm very excited to be having her solo show. And her journey has always been, I think in the past, you can safely say, an American narrative story. And what I'm excited about now is that we are now going on a global journey with her as her work is growing and expanding, and her artistry is getting stronger and stronger. Today we are actually going to have a lovely moderator, another fellow artist, Samir Yamin, who has a show currently up in Pasadena through until December 14th, and that's at the Armory. And what I love about her work too, and what is interesting play here for today's show, and Zeal's work, is her scope of work is focusing on like Middle Eastern photography, documentarian style work, and as an Arabian woman, I thought, or they thought, it would be an interesting concept to have the conversation between the two about this work, which is taking us into a world that we don't always know of. And also, I don't think people are comfortable talking about either, so that's another interesting aspect of this. The concept is we'll have a little chat about each piece, we'll have a chat about the work. Then we will open up the floor to any questions you may have, and feel free, enjoy. No holds barred. No holds barred. Anyway, so I introduce to you Zeal Harris.
I'd like to thank everyone for being here today. As I look around the room, I see a lot of familiar faces and some new ones as well, and I'm happy about that. There's at least 10 or 11 years of friendships and relationships in this room at the moment since I moved here in 2001, and I'm excited to be here. So I asked Samir Yamin to moderate the conversation in case we needed it. I felt that it was important to expand the dialogue to make it an international conversation. The work has international subject matter, and Samira is one of the people in my life that I felt most capable of being able to moderate this conversation and expand it the way that I hoped it would be. Samira curated one of the first exhibits that I was in. She's a mentee of Judy Baca, who runs Spark Gallery in Venice, and she put a call out for women of color to consider the term homeland and what that means. And how many women submitted to that?
But there were so many of us in the show that we whittled it down as much as we could, but it was basically salon style still, because I just liked so much of the work.
I think there were about 30 young women in the show, women of color.
Possible.
And it was a great event, and we actually were interviewed by Sonali Kohakar on Pacific Radio about the exhibit at that time. And so I followed her work. Now she has an MFA from UC Irvine, and she's been exhibiting recently. She was at the Santa Monica Museum Project Room, and she takes up really tough subjects like media and representation of the Middle East. She's also, again, very versed in women of color politics, and she's a visual artist, and that makes her so great for this today. So I just start off talking about how I got the title of the show, which is not where they're supposed to be. The title of the show came about because I was talking to a friend who's a professor named Tisa Bryant, and she teaches at Cal Arts, and she's in the creative writing program, and she's a writer herself. And we were having lunch during one day of the Astro Blackness Conference at Loyola Marymount University earlier in the year. So I was telling her about the new work that I'm working on. And so I said, well, I'm doing my compositions for some work, and I'm doing work about a play called Harvest, which is written by an Indian woman in East India. And one of the settings was based on a Japanese mall. And I said, I'm not really sure what to do with this. This mall is the perfect space. I've been Googling for days the right environment that I would base this setting on. And this is the perfect one because it's futuristic and organic looking and it's just right. So that painting is not here today because I'm still working on it, but it's going to be called organmall.com. And basically it's a shopping center area where people go and they're there to sell their organs and to have the surgery performed, but all of the businesses that come about in service to this, this action, I guess you could say. And actually that was it came about after the conversation with Sonali when she was talking about how in India with the call center culture that's happening, shopping centers were popping up to support these call center, cultures. So anyway, yeah. Yes. So my friend Tisa said, well, I kind of like that the people aren't where they're supposed to be. And then I just had that aha moment. I was like, oh my gosh, that works for all of the work that I'm working on right now. Because I had like little short stories and, how do you put the short stories together when they seem a little disparate, and a little loose. And so she said, you know what, I think that works for you. So that's where the title came from. In the press release and on the artist statement, I talk about how I had a professor at Howard named Dr. Sybil Roberts. And there, I started off as an art major, but then I went into theater because, I don't know, art's kind of lonely sometimes. And the theater people seemed like they were having so much fun. And they just seemed so cool, and I don't know, I like the storytelling aspect of it. I thought I might want to act, but I never auditioned for anything, so I guess not. But I did try being a writer for a little while, and that is what comes into my work. It's the storytelling that I come back to again and again. And at least right now, I feel strongly committed to the storytelling. So, I'm hoping I'm not being too long-winded, but the Jihad series, which is the 6 paintings here that are 44 by 60, they are based on a friend's true experience in Beirut. So in 1999, I picked her up from the airport after this trip, and she told me about her trip, and it just seemed so amazing that she had this experience. I had been her friend since 1993, and she had this like wild and loose personality. She's just always happy and always making jokes and always smiling. And around 97 or 98, I ran into her on campus. I hadn't seen her for a little while. And she was wearing all black, and she was covered up, and she was wearing soft shoes, and she just was very low-key. And I was concerned because that presentation didn't seem to match her spirit. And I asked her about it. She said, well, she converted to Islam because she had run into trouble with drinking, with alcohol, and that was her way of dealing with it. And so a lot of people in college go through something where they explore some whole new paradigm, and hers was exploring Islam. So she went to do study abroad in Beirut for the summer, and she was telling me that she was going to go with a friend. She didn't say if it was a boyfriend or not, but she was going to go with a friend. And this is where we get to the first painting here, which is day 1. So she said that he had been talking jihad, 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 jihad all summer. But then when they got there on the first day, a bomb dropped somewhere in the city, in Beirut, and he left on the first plane the next day. So that's the text that I wanted to have translated at the bottom. The text actually doesn't say that at the bottom because I had help with the translation. I don't actually speak or write Arabic. So I have a Somali friend who can speak and write Arabic, and she actually wrote out the Arabic. I traced the areas and had her write the text, and then I traced her handwriting onto the paintings. And then she actually needed a little help with the translation because she speaks multiple languages, so she hasn't been speaking or writing Arabic for a little while. So she asked her co-worker, who happened to be Lebanese, if she would look over the translation before we put it on the paintings. So the Lebanese woman's name is Mai Katab, and Mai was, when she translated it differently than how I wanted it translated. First of all, there was a problem with the word jihad. In America, we use the word jihad, we understand it to mean a holy war. I think that's how we've all probably been brought up to understand it. It means that Muslims are making war against people who are not Muslim to convert them to Islam. But that's not how they see it. The word jihad specifically means a war that is done in retaliation against people who are against Muslims. So for them, they didn't understand the use of the word jihad at all whatsoever. They were like, are they going to make war on the Lebanese? I don't understand. They have no idea what it means in America. So that was one thing with the translation. So she translated it a little differently so that it doesn't say exactly that. And the other thing is that my friend said, she called Beirut the Paris of the Middle East, but in Beirut, in Lebanon, they refer to their country as the Switzerland of the Middle East. Still not quite sure what that means, but I went with her translation because I felt it was important to include the voice of a woman, and again, to go back to this idea of international dialogue, I felt that it was important that I consider, these things that they were telling me. Still, I wanted to keep the title of the series as Jihad Jihad because I'm speaking to multiple audiences. And also, what I deal with here is the irony of what happens is that I think in American culture, there is a perception that people in the Middle East may be war makers most of the time, or it's not a loving and inviting culture or society. And so I wanted to show contrast to that. So in this series, my character moves from being an outsider through the paintings to being an insider where you can barely find her in the composition. So in the first painting, here's her friend who had wanted to make jihad jihad, and he's running away. I have him dressed in an outfit kind of like a Black American Muslim, like Nation of Islam, with a bow tie and a suit. There's no bean pie, I think it fell out of his hand, but... And the people are sitting at a cafe. I did a lot of research for hours and hours and like 500 images on a Pinterest board. I just looked at pictures of downtown Beirut and tried to get a sense of what it was like. I didn't see my friends' pictures of the story, I just had my own imagination. And then to try to get specific, I looked at photographs and did the best that I could to be as accurate, to give an impression or a feeling as possible. So when I asked my friend, E.G., I'm protecting her privacy a little bit, how the people reacted when the bomb dropped on the city, she said they were alarmed, but they didn't go anywhere. So I tried to capture that in the people that are sitting at the table. The bomb's going off, but they're still smoking their cigarettes and, drinking coffee at the cafe. And in the background, there's a mosque and a church, which are next to each other. And in actuality, since Lebanon is secular, there is this happening in many places. There'll be different religions, having their temples next to each other. So, so that's what's happening in the first painting. In the second painting here, which is a little crooked, let's see, is that straight?
Yeah.
Okay. In the second painting, my character E.G. is now looking through a window, and she's watching a family. And here, the text says that when I'm not going to translate it literally because I have to go over there and read it, but basically when people are inside their house, the families can be loving, and still they whisper because they thought that the government could read their minds or had tapped their homes. So outside, you would see pictures of their leaders, like posters and propaganda, but when you talk to people and had intimate conversations with them, they might share a different opinion with you that was against what you would see in the street. At the time that my character visited Lebanon, it was before 9/11, just a year or two before that. And so one of the things that made her uncomfortable wherever she went was security and soldiers everywhere that were armed. And she said, I've talked to her recently about this, and she said that now in America you see the same thing. But at that time she was really uncomfortable with it. So I just tried to capture a little bit of that sentiment in the text that's on this painting, but I really want the contrast of the family in a loving situation to be here. One of the things that was difficult about making this particular painting was finding the right images. It's kind of hard to just Google, Beirut family living room and get the right exact family setting. There aren't really pictures of people just in their houses, very much. So I had to really search very hard for those kind of intimate photographs. This family would probably be an upper class family, judging by the way they're dressed and the size of the window and the house, because downtown Beirut would be kind of like Manhattan or Brooklyn or something like that. The windows would be narrow from the sidewalk. And I needed a big window for the scene to kind of go the way I wanted it to in the painting. So the other thing that was really important about my character's travels to Beirut, she had a class epiphany. And more so than a race one, there was a class one. And the reason why is because in Beirut or Lebanon, there really isn't a middle class. They don't really have any middle class at all. So her presence there put her with the upper class because she was a student, a college student. Only rich people in Lebanon would go to college or could afford that lifestyle. So she would try to explain to them, no, I can't do that because I don't have money for that, or I'm not wealthy, or I'm not rich. And they were like, what, you're American and you're a student. I don't understand. And then they would look at her and she's still dressed in her all black because she wants to be a proper Muslim. And they would say, why are you dressed like that anyway? That's how poor people dress. And so, again, you know, she had to confront certain perceptions that she had of this right way of being Muslim. So it was important for me to show a Muslim family here that is covered. However, they're probably not poor as the people who she was going to college with were stating about Muslims who dress covered. So in this painting, Jihad Jihad, which has sort of become sort of iconographic for the images that are in the show, it was really difficult to make because it's like the repetition of the stars over and over again really gave me a stronger sense of appreciation for the patterning that happens in Islamic art and architecture and that kind of thing. And here I have my character talking to another black female character. When she told me the story, she told me that she met a rich African woman socialite, and this woman had traveled all over the world and spoke all these languages. And so here I have the main character talking about the languages she speaks and the places she's been, which is much smaller than the ones where the wealthy African woman has gone. And so here, this scene is based on the American University at Beirut, which is where my character studied during the summer, her study abroad. So I changed the color scheme, and it's more of a sort of like, it could be a temple or it could be any type of space, but the color scheme is very Islamic. Once I looked at the painting after it was done, it kind of reminded me of a Roger Brown painting. I'm not sure how many people here know Roger Brown, but I have a lot of eclectic references when it comes to my work. And each painting, sometimes I can look at them and say, oh my gosh, that kind of looks like Roger Brown, or that one's kind of like Carmen Lomas Garza, or that one's kind of like Florine Stettheimer. So,
I thought that this was the Van Gogh reference.
Oh, interesting. Okay. So Samira says she thought this might be a Van Gogh reference with the cafe. Well, another thing happens sometimes is that after the painting is made, sometimes I realize I may have even copied a composition unconsciously. I'm like, wow, how did that happen? So in this painting here, now we're inside my character's room where she's staying. And I've never saw any pictures of where she stayed, but I tried to create something that would look like a single studio type of space. Probably looks more like Washington, D.C. than Beirut. And you know, when I was making these paintings, I was really conscious of the fact that I was in territory where I'm probably not supposed to be there, because I started thinking about those like anthropological paintings that like Europeans would do of native people wherever they went in the world from like, I don't know, 1500 until like 1900s, and there would be like these drawings and all the characters would look weirdly half Europeanish. And I was like, I wonder if, you know, someone from Beirut would look at my paintings and look, they still look kind of American. So anyway, I feel like my sentiment is one that's a good one, and I take responsibility even if I'm inaccurate. So here, my character has laid out her dark clothes that she's going to wear to the party that she's been invited to. And so in this particular painting, I say here that I thought she told me the African princess invited her to the party, but actually it was the Lebanese princess who invited her to the party. So in my memory, I had actually memorized a detail wrong from the original story. I thought that the African princess invited her to this party. But no, it was actually, she corrected me. She's like, no, it was the Lebanese princess. No, it was the Lebanese princess. It was the Lebanese princess who also sponsored her makeover, which is what we see here in this painting, and bought her new clothes, did her hair, and she even got her hair relaxed while she was in Beirut. I'm hearing the laughter from the women because, you know, hair relaxed, it's surprising because you would think that everyone in Beirut would have light olive skin and straight hair. When I asked her about that, she said, well, here's the thing about Beirut. There's someone who looks like everyone you know in Beirut. And that's all she said. So I still kind of left like, left to my Google photographs, which again didn't give a whole lot of information. So I felt that it was important to show that my character was being very well taken care of, that she's getting a makeover, and that I think it's also important that these women are lighter than her, with straighter hair, and they know how to take care of her, and they're treating her well again. Because we have a kind of like color consciousness problem here in America as well, and I don't think that we get to see enough images of Black women being taken care of by women who are not Black, and maybe even by Black women themselves. And the framing around the painting is based on a design that I saw around the doorway of a spa-type lounge in Beirut. When I started doing the research for the paintings, I started looking at a lot of Persian miniatures first. I mean, I have always looked at Persian miniatures, but I specifically looked at them when I was making the series because I was thinking that I wanted to kind of make something that looked like Persian miniatures in compositional structure and the use of perspective and patterning. But as I tried to do that, I kept resisting it, and I would rework the compositions over and over and then change it to Zeal space. So, so I wanted to have the feeling of arches everywhere because I felt that that was something very important to the aesthetics of the culture. And so in each of the paintings, you'll see like arches or doorways or you know, those kinds of things. And so the last one probably comes closer to mimicking the compositional style of a Persian miniature. In this scene, it's a party scene, and this is the party that the princess has sponsored. And my character felt that this particular moment was the highlight of her trip in Beirut. And she was really grateful. She wasn't angry. She didn't resist or fight or argue with the princess about the clothes, the designer clothes that she was now wearing at the party or anything. And she said everybody in Beirut could dance really well. And she just had a really great time. So this painting is called Metza and Dabke. And Metza is the spread of food, like a feast of food, of little side dishes that some of us might recognize as like hummus, tabbouleh, fouleh, kebab, kufta. By the way, I worked at a Lebanese restaurant when I was at Howard for a little bit of time, so I know the food pretty well. And dabka is a style of music and dance that is kind of similar to hip hop. It's heavily rhythmic and to the ground because it comes from a tradition of stomping the ground in rhythmic patterns to prepare a house, the foundation of a house. And so the whole village would come together and they would stomp the ground before building the house. So the music kind of sounds like hip hop, but it's in Arabic, and it's listened to all over the Arabic speaking world, all the way to North Africa. Palestinians really like it. I find that interesting, but that's just a side note. Okay, so now we come to the harvest paintings. The harvest paintings are here in the front of the window, and maybe we should have a little question.
Yeah. If anybody, do you have any comments you'd like to pull up at this point?